Just a disclaimer before this video begins, this story is my interpretation of this tale. I might have gotten one or two details wrong, and maybe one or two things mixed up. But please understand this is from multiple sources, in-game and out-of-game, from the lore and from the fanbase. This video took me 3 weeks worth of work between editing, recording, and just researching, so please enjoy my interpretation of the story of Talos Stormcrown. Zurin Arctis, Ysmir Wolfhearth, Hyalti Earlybeard, and Tiber Septim. A traitor, a king, a liar, and a legend. All of these people come from different backgrounds, have their own interesting story to tell. But what do they all have in common? Well, what if I told you they were all connected to one of the most controversial figures in all of Tamriel's history? Talos. That's right, Talos, the god of mankind, the ninth divine, the one and the 8 in 1. This controversial figure is a big deal in the Elder Scrolls universe, especially in the eyes of the High Elves, who doubt a man could ever ascend to godhood like their ancestors used to. By the time of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, Talos is especially a big deal considering his worship has actually been outlawed by the White Gold Concordat, the peace treaty that ended the Great War between the Aldmeri Dominion and the Great Empire of Cyrodiil. And to go even further, this treaty, this White Gold Concordat, has actually caused a huge rift in Skyrim between the Empire of Cyrodiil and the local Nords, which have formed their own rebellion known as the Stormcloak Rebellion. The moral of the story is that Talos is a very big deal within the Elder Scrolls universe right now. We don't know what his situation will be as of the time of the Elder Scrolls 6 whenever that decides to come out, but I have been meaning to talk about Talos in depth a lot since I have actually done a theory a long time ago talking about the Ebony Warrior and how he might have been Great Ebonarm. I mentioned the idea of how Talos is actually 3 people, and I actually wanted to get into it today to talk about the idea of who these 3 individuals were. Today, I'm going to be discussing the story of how Talos came to existence and how Talos is actually 3 people. Now before I begin, I want to point out I got this theory a long time ago by watching Xerxakron, who mentioned the concept of the 3-headed Talos, or the multi-headed Talos as the theory is called. It is the theory that Talos is 3 individuals and is actually backed up by multiple sources in-game, which is kinda cool. To begin the story of Talos, we have to go back to Tiber Septim, and to get to Tiber Septim, we have to go back to a Nord Breton by the name of Hyalti Earlybeard. To skip a lot of the details, Hyalti Earlybeard is a dragonborn, much like you within the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. He has the blood of the dragon running through his veins, so he must be an offspring of Saint Alicia in some way, shape, or form. And although most Nords were known for this ability, Hyalti was actually a Breton who had mastery of his Thu'um. He has the ability to control his Thu'um, and thus was named Dragonborn by the Greybeards. This gathered the attention of none other than Ysmir Wolfhearth, or the Ashen King. Once upon a time, Ysmir Wolfhearth actually used to be High King of Skyrim, but due to a bunch of events happening involving, I believe, the Orcs saving mankind, and fighting the Dunmer, who at the time were the Chinmer, he actually ended up becoming the Ashen King. He used to try and fight the Dunmer, and he wanted revenge against the Tribunal for what happened at Red Mountain back when the dwarves were still alive. Sadly, he cannot do this as he is just not strong enough to fight 3 of the living gods of the Tribunal by himself, as well as the entirety of Morrowind, which is who he is trying to get revenge on. The story of how Ysmir Wolfhearth became the Ashen King is highly connected to how the Heart of Lorkhan ended up within Red Mountain. It was back during the Battle of Red Mountain, where most notably the Dunmer, who at the time were the Chinmer, the dwarves, and the Nords were all fighting each other. But that's a story for a different time. If you wish to read up on that, try reading into the history of Ysmir Wolfhearth. All you need to know is at the time, he is an undying spirit known as the Ashen King. Ysmir Wolfhearth is looking for a champion to help him get revenge on all of Morrowind. Hearing the tales of how Hyalti Earlybeard became Dragonborn in the eyes of the Greybeards actually makes Ysmir act upon this. He visits Hyalti Earlybeard and blesses him with his power, increasing his Thu'um and strength tenfold, making him one of the strongest people in all of Tamriel right now. He ends up joining up with a warlord who is trying to conquer lands somewhere around Falkreath and into the Reach. During the battles Hyalti would take a part of, Ysmir Wolfhearth would appear as a giant ashen storm around Hyalti to protect him. This made Hyalti essentially untouchable. This meant that he would gain legend as a warrior that was to be feared by almost anybody he would go up against. And because of this wonderful feat, people actually named him none other than Talos, which meant Stormcrown. Due to his legend and his popularity, the warlord he signed on with actually gave him the title of General. From this point onward, the legend of Talos of Admora began to become a thing. Talos the General, or Hyalti Earlybeard, began to make a name for himself and actually got the attention of none other than the battle mage of that warlord, who is named none other than Zurin Arctis. Now all three people are on the board. Zurin Arctis, Ysmir Wolfarth, and Hyalti Earlybeard are now all a part of the story. The question is, how do they end up making Talos? Well, while there is not a lot about how Zurin and Hyalti interacted, it's safe to assume that Hyalti eventually let Zurin in on how Wolfarth was assisting him into becoming the legend that he was. These three individuals under the leadership of the Warlord ended up taking over all of Skyrim and then moving on into Cyrodiil. After taking over Cyrodiil, the Warlord became Emperor for a very, very short amount of time in which he was assassinated. The official story is supposedly that a Breton Nightblade had managed to sneak into the palace and assassinate the Emperor, and while trying to defend the Emperor, General Talos got his throat actually sliced. It didn't kill him, but it did injure him, allowing him to no longer speak. This was actually a cover-up, as the three of these individuals, Zurin, Ysmir, and Hyalti, actually orchestrated the murder of the Emperor. After the assassination of the Emperor, Talos, or Hyalti, whichever you want to call him at this point, takes the Ruby Throne for himself, which no one argues with him about because he is so popular with not only the soldiers, but also with the people for his legendary prowess and abilities. Nobody argues his claim to the throne, and thenceforth he is named Tiber Septim, Emperor of Cyrodiil. At this point in the story, Hyalti, who I'm now going to refer to as Tiber Septim, as this is what he calls himself for the rest of history, goes on to try and solidify his claim to the Ruby Throne in Cyrodiil. He sends Wolfarth out as a version of himself to go and conquer what little remained of Skyrim, High Rock, and Hammerfell. At this point, rumors begin to spread about how Tiber Septim is in two places at once, as Wolfarth is masquerading as Tiber Septim under the command of Tiber Septim himself, and Tiber Septim is actually in Cyrodiil trying to solidify his claim to the throne to the rest of Cyrodiil. So the rumors begin to spread about how Tiber Septim is actually supernatural, and how he is Talos, this divine super being that apparently conquered all of Cyrodiil and Skyrim by himself, and is now conquering all of High Rock and Hammerfell to boot. And the entire time, nobody questions if Ysmir Wolfarth is actually Tiber Septim, as no one is actually able to question him, as if you remember correctly, Tiber Septim got his throat slit, so he can't talk. So this little excuse means nobody is going to try to talk to someone who literally cannot talk. So Ysmir's real identity is kept safe from everybody, and everybody thinks that Ysmir is actually Tiber Septim as he conquers the rest of Hammerfell and High Rock. After unifying all of the races of men under one banner, Zurin, Tiber, and Ysmir Wolfarth all set their eyes on a new land, Morrowind. Now, if you remember correctly, Ysmir Wolfarth has some unfinished business with Morrowind, so he wants to see the elves burn. But Zurin and Tiber both think it's a terrible idea to attack Morrowind, considering the fact that they have 3 living gods in charge of the entire country, so attacking them would be kind of foolish. Nonetheless, Tiber Septim, through a little bit of strong arming by Ysmir Wolfarth, does go through with the assault on Morrowind. The battle is long, arduous, and both sides lose a lot of people. It ends in sort of a stalemate, where Tiber Septim and Zurin both negotiate a deal where Morrowind agrees to be a part of the new empire, but they get to keep their own independence and their own laws, independent of the laws of the empire. On top of this, Morrowind agrees to pay the empire a modest tribute of ebony to assist them in the war with the rest of Tamriel. And although this is seen as a victory for Tiber Septim and Zurin Arctis, Ysmir Wolfarth is pissed. He wanted blood, he wanted to get revenge, and sadly, this did not happen. So he officially leaves the side of Tiber Septim. After this, Tiber Septim is crushed. Once Ysmir Wulfarth leaves Tiber's side, Tiber Septim no longer believes that he can officially take over Tamriel and unify everybody under one empire. This is a huge blow to him, and he no longer thinks he can do what he set out to do all those years ago. And honestly, he would be right if it wasn't for one person, Vivec. Vivec shows up at Tiber Septim's door with an amazing gift, the Numidium. He gives him the Numidium as a sign of good faith and hope that they will continue to have good relations in the future. And now this is the best chance that Tiber has to take over Tamriel. For those of you who don't know, the Numidium is the brass god, a giant brass golem constructed by the Dwemer that was supposed to become their god, their self-made god. It was powered by the Heart of Lorkhan, which if you played the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, you know that the Heart of Lorkhan is actually within Red Mountain. The Heart of Lorkhan is a powerful artifact, I suppose you could say, that is the actual heart of Lorkhan himself, which is the god that actually tricked all of the other gods into creating Mundus. That's a big story and it's very deep into the lore. All you need to know is that the heart is extremely powerful, and messing with it with the use of tonal architecture can make it so that literally anything is possible. You can become a god, you can transcend people into another divine state, you can make an entire race disappear, which is what happened with the dwarves, and any other thing you could possibly think of. Dagothar used it to become a god, the Tribunal used it to become a god, and it originally was supposed to power the Numidium, which is what Tiber Septim was just gifted. It is speculated that the dwarves wanted to use Numidium with its divine heart to actually transcend into godhood themselves, or something very similar to that, though the dwarves didn't get to see this actually happen, as at the very end of the Battle of Red Mountain, when Lord Cagnarak, leader of the dwarves, struck the Heart of Lorkhan with the Hammer of Sunder, which is a tool of tonal architecture, all of the dwarves just disappeared. Minus one that wasn't on the plane of Mundus at the time, but yes, they all just vanished. It's speculated that they actually entered Numidium, or that they transcended into another dimension altogether, but then again, there is no solid evidence to say what exactly happened to them. All that matters now though is that Numidium is in the hands of Tiber Septim, and with it, he can take over all of Tamriel. But there is only one thing stopping him now from doing so. The Numidium, when it was gifted by Vivec, did not come with batteries. The Heart of Lorkhan is the only reason that Tribunal is the Tribunal. They are divine because they draw power from the heart itself, so giving it away to power the Numidium would mean sacrificing their divinity, so they couldn't give Tiber Septim the thing that powered Numidium, and since Numidium was useless without the Heart of Lorkhan, they thought, let's just give Tiber Septim the giant brass golem as a sign of good faith. If he can find a way to power it, great, but we don't really have a use for it. So Tiber Septim, seeing the opportunities unfold in front of him, decided to task none other than Zuran Arctus with the job of finding a way to power the Numidium so that he could use it to conquer the rest of Tamriel, because now the impossible seemed possible. With this weapon on his side, nothing could stop him, and he was right, because once he did find a way to power it, he did take over the rest of Tamriel. The only thing was, how were they going to power it? Especially if it was actually going to be powered by the Heart of Lorkhan, what could substitute for the Heart of Lorkhan? So Zuran was smart and came up with a really good idea. But in order for his idea to make sense to you, I need to explain what a Shezarene is. A Shezarene is an aspect, or sometimes just an incarnation, of Lorkhan. I already explained who Lorkhan is. He is the god who tricked all of the other gods into making Mundus. He is known as the Trickster God. The elves hate him. He is a very powerful figure and looks out for mankind because he loves them. And as it so happens to be, one of our main characters in the story, Wulfarth, just happens to be a Shezarene. This is why he is the Ashen King. This is why he is still alive and so powerful and able to lend his strength to Hayalti Earlybeard when he first started his journey. He is a Shezarene and holds the powers of Lorkhan. He is an aspect or an incarnation, either or. They're interchangeable at this point, no one knows for sure, but he is an aspect of Lorkhan and has his very essence bound to his soul and in his being. And with so much power bound to one's soul, it made Zuran think, maybe this soul that is infused with the same power that was originally going to power the Numidium, maybe this soul could substitute for the Heart of Lorkhan. And then they had a very devious and very, very evil idea. What if they tricked Wulfarth? What if they soul trapped him? And what if they use that soul to power the Numidium? This, of course, would involve betraying Wulfarth, but first they would need him to return to the Imperial City. So Tiber Septim does the one thing he knows Wulfarth will come running to. He goes and apologizes and says he's reconsidered. He would love to attack Morrowind. As long as he's willing to stay by his side so that he can conquer the rest of Tamriel, he'll do whatever he wishes. And Wulfarth falls for it. When Wulfarth arrives, the trap is sprung, and when he finds out that it's all just a trap, Wulfarth flies into fury. He is angry, he is pissed, he is so done with Tiber Septim and Zurin Arctis that he just wants to kill them. But Zurin just happens to cast the Soul Trap spell at the same time that he is obliterated. The Soul Trap backfires and captures both of their souls into a device Zurin made called the Mantella. It is a soul gem that is so strong it is able to hold the soul of Wulfarth, and since Zurin's soul just happens to be in the same area and there's room, it gets sucked into the Mantella at the same time. With both souls trapped in the same soul gem, their souls intermingle and become connected. Whatever is left of them is laying there on the ground, both in a pile of ash, Wulfarth being made of already ash, and Zurin just being obliterated to the point where he dissolved and kind of disintegrated into ash. Both of their ashes mix, and just keep that in the back of your mind as I continue telling the story. Tiber Septim is the only person who is left unharmed after this fight. Zurin and Wulfarth obliterated each other. Both of their souls are now in the Mantella, and Tiber is left off to the side with a device known as the Totem of Tiber Septim. It is a totem specifically designed by Zurin Arctis to allow the wielder to control Numidium. The only thing about the totem, though, is that you need to be Tiber Septim or an offspring of Tiber Septim in order to use it. So, obviously, anybody else who tried to control it who wasn't a direct descendant would be killed. But this is unimportant, at least until later on in the story during the events of Daggerfall. For now, all you need to know is Tiber Septim is fine, and he sees the Mantella, and he sees his dead friends, and he thinks, I'm alive, whatever. And he grabs the Mantella, and he begins to move forward with his plans. He goes and installs the Mantella into the Numidium, and controls it with the control rod as it finally comes online for the first time. And as it happens to be, Zurin was right. The Mantella does power the Numidium. Numidium powers up for the first time, and a very peculiar thing happens. The Numidium is a god. Most people see it as a giant golem, but it really is a god. It is a weapon, but it has the capabilities and is powered by Lorkhan's essence, essentially. So it does have divine power running through it, just as much as the Tribunal, who used the same power, became gods themselves. So the Numidium becomes sentient in a way, and is able to perceive and understand things. That's one of the reasons it's such a powerful object, is because not only is it a giant towering 1,000-foot tall brass golem that can destroy anything, but it literally has the ability to mess with things as though it were a god. So when it sees Talos, or Tiber Septim I should say, for the first time, it perceives something very interesting. It sees the history of Tiber Septim. It sees the story that I just told you. 3 men that formed together to make something much bigger than themselves. To make something that would outlive all of them. To make something amazing. In that moment of seeing this amazing story that it just perceived, it beams it right back into Tiber Septim, and something interesting happens. It's very, very bizarre, and a lot of the lore is kind of spotty as to whether this is canon or not, but Tiber Septim achieves something known as Chim. And Chim is something that is very, very bizarre, but really interesting. Describing Chim is very, very difficult, because it's something that is not just a straightforward answer. It involves a lot of research to really understand. A very basic explanation of this, though, for the story, is that Tiber Septim is now achieving this state that allows him to do whatever he wishes to do, because he now understands his place in the universe, thanks to this divine knowledge that the Numidium has just bestowed upon him. He can now do things within an instant. He now sees himself as Talos of Admora. Talos Stormcrown, the legend that the Numidium just perceived, is now something that he believes wholeheartedly is him. And now he has the power, due to his state of being, to actually back that up. So with the power of Numidium in hand, he goes on and conquers the rest of Tamriel, forming the legend that is Tiber Septim, the emperor who unified all of Tamriel. I should probably mention one last interesting tidbit about this story though, that I did leave out towards the end. The very last battle towards the end of the Tiber Wars, which is the wars that unified all of Tamriel under one empire, was the Battle of Alinor. The Battle of Alinor was the hardest battle for Tiber Septim to see himself winning, as it was the one battle with the strongest race in all of Tamriel, the Ultimur. This was the battle that Tiber Septim was most worried about, because once Wulfarth left with his power, he didn't think he could take over the powerhouse that was Alinor and the High Elves. But with Numidium, he was able to do it in an instant. The thing though about the Battle of Alinor was at the very end, when Numidium stood over everything, a being appeared right below Numidium. It was an undead, unlike any other that had been seen before, an ashen one that summoned a strong surge of energy that destroyed Numidium in an instant. And then after Numidium was destroyed, the being disappeared. After this event, a lot of rumors and stories began to circulate about a very powerful undead that could not die. It kind of haunted the underworld and even ruled it in certain areas. This being was known as the Underking, and most people were unsure of where it came from or why it had never shown itself before. And some people even said that the Underking used to be the battle mage of none other than Tiber Septim himself. But if that were the case, Zurin Arctis is dead. How could he possibly be the Underking? Well, what if I told you that it was true, that Zurin Arctis did become the Underking? Remember that little tidbit I told you to remember about how Zurin's remains mixed with Wulfarth's? Well, in the throne room, when Zorin and Wulfarth killed each other, and they were both turned into ash and then soul-trapped, when their souls entered the Mantella, something bizarre happened with Zorin. See, somehow Zorin's soul and his consciousness became two separate things in an instant. Maybe there wasn't enough room in the soul gem, maybe something like that happened. But Zorin's soul and Zorin's consciousness became two things, and his consciousness gripped onto the immortal yet decrepit and decaying body of Wulfarth. As their ashes mixed together, Wulfarth reformed without a soul, and Zorin's consciousness kind of filled the spot of that. And what was left after all was said and done was a new, entirely different being known as the Underking. The Underking is one of the characters in the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall. He is a character that just wishes to die and be reunited with its soul, which is trapped within the Mantella, which is the item that powers the Numidium, which is one of these central, key things within the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall. The whole point of the game is that everybody wants to get the Numidium. Well, the Underking wants the Numidium so he can finally die, which is one of the endings that is achieved and is canon. It's very interesting because if you read into the lore, most people refer to the Underking as Wulfarth. And then some people also refer to the Underking as Zurin Arctis. But they're two in the same being at this point, because what little remains of each one formed the Underking. And we know for sure that Zurin Arctis is the Underking because in the beginning of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, a quote from the Underking pops up, and it says, Zurin Arctis, the Underking. Not King Wulfarth, the Underking, Zurin Arctis. So clearly it's Wulfarth's body, but it's the consciousness and personality of Zurin Arctis. Though it is interesting to note that all three beings technically did come together to form Talos. What the Numidium perceived wasn't just Tiber Septim. It perceived all three beings, Wulfarth, Zurin, and Talos. It's confusing, I know. Trying to wrap my head around it for the last 2 weeks or so to try and research it was agonizing. I found a couple Reddit posts, I found a couple official texts, I read into the lore of the games, the narratives, everything I could from Morrowind, everything I could from the Imperial Library, everything that I could that would help me make sense of it, and this is the best interpretation I could come up with. These three beings came together because of the power of Lorkhan's heart, which powered Numidium, and Numidium perceived Tiber Septim as Talos, which is three people. The story of Tiber Septim is told of these three beings. Zurin Arctis, Ysmir Wulfarth, and Hyalti Earlybeard. A traitor, a king, and a liar. Each one of these three individuals formed something that was much bigger than themselves, and at the end of the day, when Tiber Septim finally did pass on, through his state of being known as Chim, he managed to actually ascend to the state of godhood. And if you're confused as to how this state of Chim helped him achieve godhood, I want to read something I read that I found very interesting. If you don't know, in Skyrim there is a preacher in Whiterun known as Heimskr. Heimskr is a preacher of Talos. He's a priest of Talos, and he preaches outside of Dragon's Reach in front of the giant statue of Talos. The thing he reads from is called From the Many-Headed Talos. It is off of the Imperial Library website, which holds a lot of the extended Elder Scrolls lore that isn't considered canon. But considering Heimskr is from the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which is canon, I would assume at this point that this excerpt is canon. So let me read you From the Many-Headed Talos. And after the throne of Alinor did finally break at the feet of men, and news of it came to the Dragon Emperor in Cyrodiil, he gathered his captains and spoke to them, saying, and just so you're aware, this next part is the part that Heimskr did read in Skyrim. You have suffered for me to win this throne, and I see how you hate jungle. Let me show you the power of Talos Stormcrown, born of the north, where my breath is long winter. I breathe now in royalty, and reshape this land which is mine. I do this for you, Red Legions, for I love you.
But you were once man, aye, and as man you said, let me show you the power of Talos Stormcrown, born of the north, where my breath is long winter. I breathe now in royalty, and reshape this land which is mine. I do this for you, Red Legions, for I love you!
To give you guys some context, if you guys didn't know, Cyrodiil, before the reign of Tiber Septim, used to be a giant sprawling rainforest-like jungle. This is why the elves that used to live there during the time of Saint Alicia were known as the Wild Elves, because they lived in a jungle that was much like the rainforest. The thing is, most of the Imperials and humans that ended up living there afterwards hated the jungle, and they didn't like how humid and wet and messy and dirty the jungle was. So in this excerpt, Tiber Septim is saying that he wants to reshape the land to be not a jungle, but to be the way it is by the time of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. You see in Oblivion that Cyrodiil is much more European medieval-esque. It's more like forests and oak trees. It's more temperate and it's got mountains, but there are no jungles. There are no jungles at all. There's swamps in the lower regions towards Blackmarsh, but not towards the center, which is where it used to be a giant sprawling jungle. This means that this excerpt is saying that Tiber Septim got rid of the jungle like that. He snapped his fingers and the land was reshaped in his image. He was able to change the way the world worked because he achieved a state of Chim, and he ascended to become a god afterwards. Just the simple name of this excerpt, From the Multi-Headed Talos, which is now canon, mind you, this excerpt. This means that it kind of confirms this little theory story I've been telling you, that Talos is three people. That whether that means literally or figuratively, Talos is made up of three different people. Zurin Arctis, Ysmir Wulfarth, and Hyalti Earlybeard made the legend that was Tiber Septim, and made the god that was Talos. So the next time a Thalmor comes up to you and says it's preposterous how a man became a god, remind them not a man became a god, but three men became a god. Holy crap, that video was long. I'm not going to waste too much more of your guys' time. The video is basically over. I just wanted to say thank you for watching up to this point. I really did a lot of research for this video. It took me about a week or two's worth of just reading excerpts of other lore and other such things off of the Imperial Library and stuff, and then searching through Reddit pages for people to explain it. I did, I think, a pretty decent job explaining it in a very simple way, and some people may be like, some details I got wrong, but the gist of the story is the same. This is basically the story of Talos and how Tiber Septim rose to power and how he became a divine. And I found it interesting and insightful, and I'm hoping you guys find it interesting and insightful as well. This is the first video I'm working on with a new schedule going where I focus more on the individual videos themselves and make them the best videos that I can. If you guys like this, stick around for more stuff like this weekly. You'll be getting about a video or two every single week with a lot of effort and dedicated put towards it. I talk about mostly Elder Scrolls, though I'm not too opposed to talking about other Bethesda things like Fallout. It's just if you guys want to see it. But for now, I'm going to stick with Elder Scrolls and look forward to some stuff on mods and stuff in the coming weeks, and maybe another lore discussion or two, who knows. I like to do top 5s and other things, but either way, just go check out my channel, see what I've done, see what's recommended for you guys, and I hope you guys stick around for more stuff in the future. Thank you so much for watching this. You guys take it easy. Go out there and strive to break infinity and have a nice day, night, evening, wherever and whenever you're at. You guys take it easy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.